Hi, James again, and I got my friend Xander back here, and we're going to talk some more about some bees. And this one is about how important pollinators are. It's said that if all the pollinators, all the bees disappeared off the earth at once, humankind would only have a few years before we cease to exist, because without pollinators, we don't have the systems that we draw our food and other things from. So let's talk about that today. Let's talk about the idea of the importance of bees in human history and human existence, because I don't think, like a lot of things in food now, people aren't understanding food or where it comes from and things like that. So
Absolutely.
I think what I'd like you to talk about today, if you could, is just the importance and the synergy between human evolution and existence and pollinators like bees.
Sure. I think the basis of the connection between bees and humans started with early man. The beginning of the relationship was just early humans finding these hives in Central and Western and Eastern Europe and just grabbing the honey because, of course, it's very nutrient and sugar rich. And as we move forward in time to Egyptians and African civilizations, that's when actual beekeeping started to become a super popular attribute of a lot of societies, because it wasn't just about providing food, it was also about allowing them to pollinate their own crops without having to do it with their own hands.
Yeah, and didn't like Egyptians and a lot of ancient civilizations utilize honey in the way as a medicine and as a component in other things?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of particular honey that people are developing now that offers great medicinal purposes and antibacterial components that provide a lot of key nutrients for human health.
Yeah, I was really amazed when I learned that honey almost has an indefinite shelf life.
Yeah,
I mean, they have removed honey from tombs in Egypt, and the honey is still edible.
yeah,
And its antibacterial components being used as something on the skin and whatnot, I think was part of our interaction with the product that is honey at our earliest stages.
yeah.
I think of one thing that's funny is a lot of friends of mine who are mead makers. People say honey mead was probably the first alcoholic beverage consumed by
Really?
humans,
Okay.
because you take a big log full of honeycomb, full of honey, there's a monsoon, it washes the bees out and drowns them, it puts that water in there, and because of the antibacterial nature of honey,
Mm-hmm.
it wants to ferment. So that's why I've always been told that honey was the first fermented product that humans consumed.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to the idea of the absolute importance of bees, how do we get across to people today that are using a lot of these products that are detrimental to bees and insects in their yards and in agriculture and big ag? I was involved on a wheat farm. We really need to start talking about the idea of how do we help bees survive? Because without pollinators, we don't survive.
Right. I think the very basis of it is really understanding where a lot of our food comes from.
Yeah.
Pollinators contribute over 90% of all the pollination that we have. Without them, we're creating a system where humans need to single-handedly pollinate all the plants, which makes it so much more
That's
difficult.
impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
A very good example of that, I watched this when I was on the islands, is the hand pollination of vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
How hard it is that to make that orchid produce that bean. And it almost has to be done by hand.
Yeah.
Because there's very few things that will pollinate that type of plant. And that's one thing that's very interesting to me, is the idea that the evolution of the pollinator, of this certain bee, how it's physiologically built, is built around how it can access that nectar, that pollen in those certain plants. And the diversity in bees is a testament to the diversity of our plant systems and whatnot on Earth.
Totally.
Because without that symbiotic relationship, one does not beget the other.
Yeah, I mean that just highlights the importance of native bees, because native bees are really good at specifically pollinating individual plants. Like we were talking about the alkali bee.
Mm-hmm.
They're extremely good at pollinating alfalfa, which is a humongous export within Eastern Washington.
Yes.
And then you also have mason bees, which are great at pollinating fruits, which creates a great component within the Yakima orchards and Wenatchee orchards.
Now, are those a native bee, or do they introduce those bees into the orchards?
Those are all native bees.
Wow.
It's a great thing that we have in being able to highlight that protecting them is so key, because without them, you're going to have to rely a lot more on more general bees that may not be doing a good of a job at
They're not
doing
as efficient at it as the ones that evolved in that idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, it really touches on the idea of how important these systems are and how interconnected they are. The way we look at agriculture, we have looked at agriculture in a monoculture idea, the removal of what we considered weeds and whatnot that were actually the food stuff for various pollinators. They're not bees, but I always think about the monarch butterfly and milkweed.
Yeah.
When milkweed was eradicated off ditch banks and other areas throughout farming country in the Midwest and whatnot, it starved the monarch butterfly.
Absolutely.
So it's our actions. Well, we've always proved that we're pretty good at an action that not thinking about the consequences when we're in the idea of production agriculture or just how humans live.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things I really wanted you to talk about, and you have, just about how important that synergy is. That if we lose that companionship, we lose the ability to survive in the ways we've survived for millennia.
Sure.
And I really like honey, and
Yeah.
I like food,
Mm-hmm.
and all these things. And the importance of bees is something we just have to oppress upon people.
Right.
We have to educate people. And that's one great thing that you're doing, because with your degree and what you're studying, going out there, speaking to young people when they're in the schools to get them, get this ingrained into them as they go through their lives. They see bees as a benefit, not something to be scared of.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're allergic, you're allergic, but just one of those things that these types of things you see are delicate, and they need to be here, because without them, we're not here.
Sure.
So, like I said, let's tread lightly on the bees,
Yeah.
and let's remember that we are here because of their interaction in this environment, and without them, we're not here anymore. So, thanks, Xander.
Of course.
Good talking to you again.
Always.
And we'll get to the next one eventually. We'll see how everything's doing. So, thanks, brother.
Of course, anytime.
Aloha.